Hello everybody and welcome to my video on the Kodak i60, a reusable 35mm film camera designed with an inspiration that harkens back to the Instamatics. So this is very similar to many of the other Corex made cameras like the Agfa Photo, the Kodak F9 Ultra, and the Ilford Sprite 35-2, which look exactly like this Agfa Photo one here. But there are some cosmetic and functional differences on this one that we will go over. So, the Kodak i60 is a 35mm point-and-shoot camera. Now what that means is that it can take any 35mm film with a couple of asterisks. You will want to use a fast film. And that all you have to do is point it in the direction of your subject and take the picture, and it will do that. It has no light meter, even though it looks like maybe it probably should. No light meter. It has a leaf shutter. It has a shutter speed of approximately 1/100th of a second. It does have a camera flash, and the flash will sync at the shutter speed of 1/100th of a second. And though it does have the pop-up flash, which is a different design element than any of the other cameras in this camera's class, it does have very many commonalities with the rest of the Corex cameras, including the double film show, the three that I mentioned earlier, the Vibe 501F, and the generic one that is available for about 20 bucks on AliExpress. So, in addition to the flash being different, then some of the positioning on the top and then the back and the battery chamber are in different places as well. But insofar as I can tell, the rest of it seems to be very much the same. One difference is that with the rest of the cameras, when you turn the flash on, you get a different aperture. With this camera, popping up the flash does not give you a different aperture. The target market for this camera is the toy and the fun user, and it's specifically targeted at people who have nostalgia for the old Instamatic cameras and the way that the Instamatics returned images. It's primarily made of plastic, and so it's very lightweight. Did it come with a strap? It does come with a wrist strap that you can put on it so you can carry it around with you and use it and enjoy it. It's made by the Corex Corporation in China. This body design is new, this cosmetic design and then the pop-up flash and things like that. This is new, and so it appears that this was released in late 2022. And insofar as I know, this is the only version of this type of camera that has the pop-up flash. Will that be the case in 6 months? No idea, but we'll see. Kudos, by the way, to Kodak for getting this pop-up flash, which is kind of a neat thing, and also for the design on this. This is a good-looking camera. So, as we do, let's go over what all of the features are, and we'll start here on the top. This is the flash that will pop up when we go to take a flash. Film rewind knob and lever. And we will use this when it comes time to rewind film. This is your flash ready indicator light, shutter release button, frame count window. On the camera's front, we have a design element, the viewfinder window, model name, Kodak, lens, flash release button, Kodak logo. On this side, we have the battery chamber, and then on each side, we have a loop for the camera straps. On the camera's back, we have the film door right here and a little release clip. This, by the way, this type of release clip, much better than the push-down ones that the rest of these type of cameras come with. This is much easier to use and also much harder to break. Viewfinder window, film advance gear. On the camera's bottom, we have the model number. Is that just the model number? I'm not sure if that's a model number or a serial number, but there's a sticker there with some information on it, and the film rewind button. Inside of the camera, we have the film cassette chamber right here, which is where we're going to load the film in just a couple of minutes. Not even. This is the imaging area where the image will be projected onto the film. The sprocket spins as the film is taken up to arm the shutter. Over here we have the film take-up spool. And then here we have the pressure ridges that, if you've seen any of the other videos on these similar cameras, you're probably familiar with right now, that hold the film on plane as it moves through here so that the images can be properly focused. A note on these ridges, these feel a little bit different than the ones on the f9 and the double film type cameras, but with the double film show, which has the same ridge type system, that camera left scratches in the back of the film that when I used that. So, but these do feel different. Yeah, these I just checked one of the f9 cameras, and these feel a bit smoother and thicker than the ridges in that. So maybe they heard me when I said, guys, fix this, and have gone back to try and fix it. Or maybe they heard many other people say that. Anyway, first thing we're going to do here is we're going to load the battery. To load the battery, we're going to slide this battery door open. Wow, I really thought I broke it. Okay, so it takes a single AA battery, and the positive terminal goes towards the base of the camera, just like that. We're going to slide the battery cover back on. If you lose the battery cover, it looks like that's not the end of the world. You just have to not hit the camera so hard the battery pops out. Now the battery only powers the flash, so you can see there's no light lit up right here. So I'm going to pop up the flash, which will start it powering up, and ooh, there's a little capacitor whine. And the capacitor usually takes, in this type of camera, a little bit to power up for the first time because it's powering up from nothing. So we'll give it a moment here. Okay, there you go. Now you can see it's glowing red, which means that when we take this photo, the flash should discharge. And it does. And immediately goes back to capacitor whine as soon as it discharges so that it can get ready to go again. This is the only model of this camera, by the way. The other three that I have, the Agfa, the Ilford, and the Ultra F9 by Kodak. This is the fourth of these I've recorded in the last hour. And those ones do not have an audible capacitor whine. So I'm going to go out on a limb and guess that there is some sort of difference in the internals in terms of the electronics with this camera. So at any rate, we're not going to need the flash again. So I'm going to take the battery out. Just take the battery cap off. Or if not, a key or something like that will give you enough to remove that. And if you're not going to use the flash, it's a good idea, especially if you're going to let this sit for a little while, it's a good idea to take the battery out because an exploded battery inside a camera will cause problems. And even though with this one you would just lose flash function, it's still better to avoid the exploded battery. Okay, next thing we're going to do is load film into this camera. So to load film, we open up the back of the camera and we pop the film rewind knob out like that. We're going to grab our roll of film, drop it into the cassette chamber, and manipulate things until the film rewind knob goes back into the camera. Pull out a leader. There are some hooks on the bottom of the film take-up spool. We're going to get the film leader to connect with those, and then we're just going to advance the film. And get the shutter to arm. There we go. So now that we've done that, I'm going to close the film back. On your camera, you might notice, look at this and see that there's an S there. And now there might be a dot. Now there should be a 1. On this specific one that I have, the frame counter is not advancing a full count. Sometimes happens with these. Anyway, you're going to want to advance 2 frames, and now you're on fresh film that you can use to take a photo with. We'll talk about why that is in just a second. You can tell 2 ways this camera is going to tell you that the film is loaded properly. The first is that the shutter rearms. The shutter cannot arm unless the film is moving through the camera. The second is with the film rewind knob right here. If the film is moving through the camera, the rewind knob will spin in the opposite direction of the arrows on the film rewind knob. Okay? That's because there's a mechanical connection as the film moves out of the cassette and over here. All right, so you're taking your pictures, you're going through your day. Film can be used once. It's one and done. It can record an image by having light reach the film in a controlled manner with a proper shutter speed and aperture, or in an uncontrolled manner by doing this. if you were to open up your film back while your film was loaded like this, all of the images outside of the cassette would be erased. So basically the film is going to absorb every photon that reaches it, or as many of them as it can. And if you open up the film back, it's going to have as many as it wants, and everything will be erased. Every photo that has been taken or that could be taken. So I'm doing this so you can see what happens inside the camera when you take a picture. So I just took a picture. Here's the edge of the shutter box. And, well, that didn't engage. There we go. That should have engaged the sprocket holes. I did not do a good job of that. But at any rate, what would happen for a proper rearming is that the film would move the length of the imaging area plus about an extra 2 millimeters. And then at that point, the shutter would be rearmed and you have fresh film that was in the cassette to take a photo with. And that process just repeats over and over again as you take photos, okay? So what happens when you want to rewind your film, when you reach the end of the film? All you have to do is push down the film rewind button, lift up the film rewind lever, and now you can rewind your film, and you don't even have to hold the rewind button down. There we go. Now at this point, it's now safe to open up the back of your camera because the film will be back inside of the cassette. Don't open up your camera until you've fully rewound the film. We're going to lift up the film rewind knob. We're going to pull out the film cassette just like that. And you would want to rewind your film all the way into the cassette. This way, you don't accidentally reuse it. So then you can either drop in your next roll of film, or if you're done shooting for the day, drop the film rewind post back into place, close the film back, just like that, and make sure you trigger your shutter so that you take tension off of the springs. Okay, so we've seen a lot of the different functions of this camera. Pop up the flash and how to use it, how to load film, how to advance it, but we haven't actually seen how to take a photo, so let's walk through the entire process of that. If you're indoors or in the dark, a darker area, under heavy shade for instance, you can pop up the flash so that you have enough light, okay? Then what you're going to do, you're going to decide, the first thing you're going to decide is whether or not you want to use the flash. Next thing you're going to do is look through the viewfinder here, and you're going to compose your image as you want it to look on your film. Then you're going to push the shutter release button right there, and then you're going to advance the film. That's it. That's how you take a photo with this camera. It's super easy. There's nothing to do except decide whether you want to use the flash, compose the image, and take the photo. Okay, so what about double exposures? Well, they're not possible. So there's the reason that double exposures are not possible with this camera are that gear in the back that we saw here that engages with the sprocket holes that arms the shutter. If that gear doesn't turn, the shutter doesn't arm, and a double exposure requires that the film stay in place. So in order for the shutter to arm, the film has to move. So there's double exposure prevention is built into this camera. Now, to that end, Corex, if you're watching this, two things that would make future generations of this type of camera significantly more usable would be a multiple exposure switch and a bulb shutter option. So let me give you some tips for using your Kodak i60. The first is going to be with your film. Use something that's a 400 ISO film at least. A couple of different things. C41 400 ISO film like Ultramax especially, Fuji Superia as well. And if you wanted to use black and white in HP5 or T-Max 400, FOMA 400, Kentmere 400, those are all really tolerant to overexposure. So if you're using 1/100th of a second, if this is probably about an f9 camera like the others, then you're going to get thick negatives, but you can still pull images off of them. Your lab can still scan images off of them. So out in full sun with 400 ISO film, those ridges on the back of the film back, if they are inclined to leave scratches on the camera, on the film, as they are with the double film show and others. And again, the ridges on this one feel smoother and wider. But at any rate, having slightly thick negatives will mask that. Then the other thing is 400 ISO film you can use outside. You can take it inside to a brightly lit room. You can use your flash with it indoors and it'll work really well. These are really light and easy to carry around, so you should do that. And you should carry them around and enjoy the use of them for taking low-stress, fun photos. But to that end, one of the things that I harp on about these cameras in all of my videos is that they tend to open if you hit them too hard. But this has a different closing mechanism, so I'm not sure if that would happen with this one or not. In general, closing mechanisms like this are a little bit better than what they used on the previous cameras that we've had videos about. So, a couple of things not to do with your camera. Don't let it get wet. They're not weather sealed, and water could damage the handful of metal components in them. Take your battery out when you're not going to use it for a little bit because you don't want that to explode, even though the only thing you'll lose is your flash. Digging out an exploded battery is not fun. Also, don't leave these in your car because extreme heat and extreme cold can have deleterious effects on the plastic, especially the plastic body. And just remember that even though this isn't a precision tool, it is still a camera that can take nice and fun images. So as long as you take care of your camera will take care of you. Thank you, everyone, and I'll see you in the next video.